So this weekend, The Invisible Man is coming out. And so I thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about that failed Monsters Universal Dark Universe that they were trying to launch a couple years back with The Mummy, and they'd announced all of these different projects. They put out a cast photo with all these people that they'd hired. They had an office building, and then The Mummy came out, and this thing was dead in the water 2 weeks later. And so why is it that, do you think, what was wrong with what they tried to do with this, the previous version of the Monster Universe? And then we'll cycle back around on the back end of this and see Griffin's take on why he thinks Invisible Man's going to be the right direction. But Austin, why did it not work before?
Well, to me, the big issue was it was the picture, right? When they put out that picture of Tom Cruise and Javier Bardem and what Johnny Depp, and first of all, that picture was completely photoshopped and it was hilarious. But two, it's like they have this goal in mind, and they almost knew, is what it felt like, that this was going to be super successful. But they announced it, and they went on and announced everything before they knew if The Mummy was going to work. And then The Mummy comes out, and it's just a bust of a film. And at that point, pretty much everyone knew, even internally, that, well, this isn't going to work. But, oh, no, we've already announced it. So we, as someone looking from the outside in, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know if we were going to still get these movies. There were movies that were announced. There were movies that were taken down from the schedule. But they were so overly confident at the beginning. It's kind of funny to think about, but I hate it for the people involved. But at the same time, that Photoshop picture, I just think about it and I laugh. It was just an all-around bad situation for the studio because of the fact that they were so cocky in a way, confident, cocky, that universe was going to work. I'm almost confused by what was going on there, because they put that photo out like 3 weeks before the movie came out, so they had to have like sat down and watched it and been like, this is not billion-dollar material right here. They had to know that, and they still were like, let's put the picture out. Let's still go forward with this. That's what's just baffling to me. Griffin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking to someone who actually will defend The Mummy. I had good fun with it, but its biggest, I did. I really, I think it's fun. When it's not trying to build a universe, that's its big problem. They tried to just cram this like Marvel Cinematic Universe into a series of films. Or into a movie that really shouldn't have been doing that. And here's the thing when it comes to the Universal monster movies. In theory, I kind of like the idea of like an interconnected monster universe. I think it could work, but their approach was so wrong, because these movies are ultimately low-budget creature features, right? They're really small, self-contained, intimate character films. And that, to me, that's why The Invisible Man succeeded, which I'll get into a little bit later on. But like, what they needed to do was go back to their roots. They needed to do that, and instead they tried to make big budget blockbusters. And I mean, maybe it would work. Maybe you can do that with The Mummy, but you can't do that with films like The Wolfman or like Dracula. It just doesn't. It feels really weird. Like they were just trying to insert themselves into like a world building sort of scenario that doesn't suit their property because it was the popular thing to do at the time. They really just wanted to capitalize on a fad, and I think that's ultimately why it failed. And as you can see with like the DCEU, they kind of learned their lesson from that, and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't copy Marvel. Maybe we should just do our own thing. And I think now they're starting to realize that. But what I will say, I think the failure of the Dark Universe is what was the biggest kick in the ass that they needed, because that's what caused them to completely rethink their strategy and like scale everything back and go back to what made those Universal monster films so special in the first place.
Yes. I wonder how much even part of it is they got kind of sabotaged by their own success with the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies that were just such massive, colossal hits. And they were big budget adventure films, and they weren't small creature features. They were this Indiana Jones meets the Mummy kind of deal. And at that time, that was just the perfect thing that the market needed. And Brendan Fraser was the right guy to lead it. And so it kind of turned into this big, massive franchise. And I think that created an expectation that wasn't realistic, that would always be the case. Oh, the Mummy, that's just a commodity that's $1 billion. That probably was just an inflated thing for just that point in time in history. And so then they tried to manufacture $1 billion franchise out of something that was more lightning in the bottle before. And so what you get this movie, and it's like, we'll get Tom Cruise and we'll get Russell Crowe and just get all these big name people, and then we'll make it a shared universe. That's working for them. And so it's just all the pieces for a prepackaged blockbuster. And then, like, for me, one of the things that stuck out to me is just how quippy it was. It felt like Joss Whedon did a pass on the script or something like that. And it just didn't work for me. Like, I didn't hate it. Like, I thought it was fun. But at the same time, I was like, that was weird. That was like, what they're trying to do so many different things. There's so many different tones, and they're trying to set so many different things up that I don't think that this thing's going to work. And then, of course, obviously it didn't. But I think it's that they had the cart was way too in front of the horse, and they I think got the totally wrong message from the success of The Mummy, and then looking at where the market was at with the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, like, they even, like, created, like, a universe indent before they even knew if they were going to, like, succeed with a universe. It was like, what? Mm-hmm. It's like, you can't just, like, do that, Like, you have to see if something works, like, if people are interested before you go, like, oh, we're gonna make this a shared universe. And it just reeked of, like, someone on, like, a studio like board just saying, like, oh yeah, let's see, you see what Disney and Marvel are doing? Look, we have all these monsters, we can do it too. When the fact of the matter is, you can't.
Well, that's the thing too, is it sounds so good in theory, right? If you think about it, these characters all coming together, it kind of sounds like the Avengers, right? But it all comes down to the execution. And how did they go about it? Well, they got too far ahead of themselves, and they tried to play on the tropes that make the Marvel movies good. The humor, the cockiness of the characters, the upbeat nature of the storytelling, which is not what this universe is supposed to be. What it's supposed to be, in my opinion, is what they're doing with it now, and that is what Griffin said. You're kind of scaling it back. They're going back to their roots, and it is way more of a horror franchise than it would have been with the grand scale action. So I think what they're doing now is absolutely brilliant compared to what they were doing before.
And it just kind of one more thing on it, like to direct a movie, they got Alex Kurtzman, who long history as a screenwriter, long history of working on big franchises. And it was a little bit like they went, okay, man, you've written all these movies that made a truckload of money, so we're going to let you direct this movie even though you do not have a proven history as a blockbuster director. And I think you even watch the movie and you feel that a little bit inside of it, of the all of his faults as a writer translate then also to him as a director trying to launch this thing that's very complicated. And so then, he's known for trying to, cook with lots of sugar and butter to spice things up with the jokes and lots of flashy entertainment to cover up some of the faults in it. And that's kind of what The Mummy was like a little bit too. And so, I think you put all that together and it was just very bizarre. I would love to have footage of what happened in the meetings when they were greenlighting this, or like, who was the guy that was like, all right, we're moving forward this, and let's put the picture out. Like, dude, have you seen the movies? I have. Let's put the picture out there. Like, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So weird.
Well, now they're working with Blumhouse, which is also another genius creative decision they could have made. So like they're just they're learning all the right lessons from that failure, thankfully.
So using that as the transition, so I haven't seen Invisible Man. Austin hasn't seen Invisible Man. Griffin, you have, but let's kind of talk about why we think this is probably a little bit of a better fit. I think you alluded to it before, that the inherent nature of these characters is that they're not big blockbusters. They're not designed to make $1 billion. They're interesting kind of smaller stories. And so that lines up very well with the Blumhouse model of a high concept film that you can tell this contained story with it. And in the case of this one, you bring in kind of this director that has a very distinct way that he does things. And he doesn't need $50 million. He doesn't need $200 million. With under $10 million, he can tell a compelling, confined story. And he's been doing that for a long time. And you do that with these characters, and you start kind of printing money, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Griffin, you've seen the movie. You can actually say something as an educated person, unlike me, who's just guessing.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, first of all, I completely floored by the film. I think I think a lot of people are going to have fun with this. It's really just edge of your seat, like, classic Hitchcockian psychological thriller. Nice. I think Lee Winnell said something really interesting in an interview. He talked about the fact that these monsters have become such a staple of pop culture to the point where they're not even scary anymore. Like he used the example of like Adam Sandler voicing a cartoon version of Dracula. Yeah. It's like we've gotten to that point when, like, in hindsight, or not in hindsight, but like in actuality, these characters used to be really terrifying, and they used to in the films used to focus on like cutting edge craftsmanship. We don't see that anymore from these properties, and so like his goal with this film was to just cut out all the noise and all the excess and get back to the root of what made these characters special. And so I think he was able to do that successfully, and he was able to actually make the Invisible Man terrifying again for a 2020 audience, for the 21st century even. It's just I think the entire approach in the model that they're going with here, just letting filmmakers come in and pitch ideas similar to kind of what they're doing with the DC films is genius. They've really reworked their model to the point where it is filmmaker centric as opposed to studio centric. They're like, I think he like even talked about a meeting he had with Jason Blum, and he was like, yeah, I was talking to them about something else, and then they brought up the fact, they were like, so, Invisible Man, would you be interested in that? And he's like, oh, I don't have any, like, thoughts about the Invisible Man. And then he, like, stepped away, came up with this really timely and poignant story, and it's effective. It works beautifully. I think they need to do that with all of their monsters kind of going forward. Not necessarily doing the same thing as the Invisible Man, but, like, taking a similar approach.
Austin, what do you think about Blumhouse starting to work with these monster universals, creatures, features?
It's perfect. If you're going to do this with a set of characters or creatures, or I think this is the perfect. The monster universe is the perfect thing to do it for. And I love Blumhouse's model, man. Even you look at a movie like Fantasy Island, and you know, it's a bad movie in my opinion, but they're doing this on a small budget and they're making money. Well, now they're transferring that over to these characters using smaller budgets, making it more filmmaker centric, but they're going to make a lot more money because these are recognizable characters and they're getting recognizable actors and actresses. And I love what I'm seeing from The Invisible Man so far. And even the first trailer, I was like, okay, maybe they showed too much of the movie. That was my biggest critique. But now I'm hearing that they didn't show anything. Now I'm hearing that the twists and turns along the way weren't even showed to us in that first trailer. So I love the model. I just love the way that they structure their company. Not every movie works. Obviously, there are some Blumhouse films that fall completely flat. But in terms of this universe and these specific characters, I think this is a brilliant way to do it. And I think The Invisible Man could start it out. From what Griffin's saying, man, you're getting me so excited. I think this is the perfect way to start out this universe.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I tweeted this out, but I really do think that, you know, looking back like several years down the road, this is going to be like a modern horror classic.
Oh, my heart. Oh, that's great.
Now I feel awesome. Even worse that I didn't RSVP to see the press screen.
That's my job, Sean. I have to shame you.